Hello, everyone. Welcome to Consumer Action's News Literacy for Savvy Consumers webinar. My name is Nelson Santiago, and I'm a Community Outreach Manager with Consumer Action, and so glad that you are joining us today. Before we move into the program, I do want to thank and acknowledge our sponsor today. Consumer Action is able to present this webinar thanks to funding from Smart News. Thank you, Smart News, for the support today. Now, if anyone happens to be new to Consumer Action, I want to tell you a little bit about us. I encourage you to visit our website when you have a moment to learn more about our work. We're a national nonprofit consumer education and advocacy organization. We were founded way back in 1971, and we're actually celebrating our 54th anniversary later this year. So watch your inbox for a little bit more information about that very soon. Our website offers you lots of consumer education materials that you can use in your community education efforts. Whether you're a credit counselor, housing counselor, a community advocate, or in some other way educate consumers on how to be smart consumers and protect themselves from fraud, we have something for you there. Most of the materials that we have are in multiple languages, typically English, Spanish, and Chinese, and oftentimes Korean and Vietnamese as well. We cover topics related to personal finance, insurance, housing, and privacy, and of course, avoiding consumer scams and avoiding fraud. Everything is downloadable for free. You'll want to check it out when you have a moment. Now, one of the latest publications that we have on our website, and which is hot off the press, is our newly updated fact sheet. It's entitled News Literacy, Skills for Judging the Credibility of What You Read, See, and Hear. And this fact sheet covers some of the topics that we're going to look into today and spend some time on today. These include what news literacy is and why it matters, how inaccurate information can quickly spread on social media. It also describes how inaccurate information or inaccurate news can lead to harm to our personal finances as well as to our health, for example. It includes a practical list of do's and don'ts to help readers protect themselves and help them protect others from misinformation. And it includes links to several resources for learning more about news literacy. You can download the fact sheet at the URL that you see at the bottom of the screen. You don't have to write it down because we will be sending you a copy of the slide deck in about a week, and you'll also get a link to the recording. So I should repeat that now because many of you will probably ask us, will you get the slides? Yes, you will get the slides as well as a recording link in a week. Now, we do have a jam-packed program, so I want to tell you about our speakers today. Here with us today will be Jason Alderman. He is the Managing Director of Communications at Smart News. And also we have Allee Quick. She's the Director of Community Engagement at the News Literacy Project. Allee will be our main presenter during today's training. After we hear from both speakers, we will have a question and answer session that will be facilitated by my colleague, Linda Williams. Yes, audience, Linda Williams is on hand today. She will be gathering the questions that you may have for our speakers, and we'll be glad to present them to them. So please use the GoToWebinar question function and type in some questions so that Linda feels all the love from you. Now let's move right into our first speaker then. Like I said, we're very lucky to have Jason here today. Jason oversees communications at Smart News. Smart News is the AI-powered news aggregation app that is used by millions of consumers. Before he joined Smart News, Jason ran global communications at Integral Ad Science. He also previously served as the Chief Communications Officer at the fintech startup Fast and at the health tech insurer Clover Heath. Jason was also the writer of not one, but 2 syndicated columns for more than a decade. His columns ran in hundreds of newspapers and media outlets around the country. Now, I remember Jason from years ago when we first met him. He was the Vice President of Public Affairs at Visa, and he ran the company's Global Financial Literacy Program. That's when we first met him, and we're really glad that for such a long time, for many years, Jason has been a friend to Consumer Action, a supporter, and always has been committed to empowering and educating consumers. So thank you for that, Jason. Now, in preparing for today's webinar, we asked Jason to start us off with a few questions to give us a little bit more background, a little more context related to news literacy and to its importance. The questions we had for Jason were to tell us from his perspective, what is this problem that we're facing with misinformation, number one. Number two, we asked him to tell us, to give us his take on what people can do to ensure that what they see online is accurate. And finally, we wanted to learn more about the research that Jason has done about how people feel today about the state of media and the issue of misinformation. So those are the three questions we had for Jason. Because this is a train the trainer, we asked him to prepare some slides that we can share with you so that you can incorporate this into your community education work. So Jason, I do have your slides up, and why don't you go ahead and
Oh no, I froze. Oh, what awful timing. Nelson, team, I'm guessing you can't hear me.
Yeah, we hear you now.
Oh, well, I'm so sorry. How I heard everything until the moment I was on. Well, gang, thank you all for having me here. I am such a huge fan of the work of Consumer Action, and I want to specifically thank everybody too who's out there today right now. The work that you do is so vital. I'm so grateful for all the work you do in your communities. Without you, we would be our nation would be in a much more desperate straits. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Let's talk a little bit about the problem with misinformation, because it really is growing, and it's growing worse and worse every day. You know, even if there wasn't a problem of misinformation, there's enough real information out there that I think would make many of us sad and depressed on any given moment. It's a flood of trials and tribulations outside in the real world. But then on top of it, there are people out there that are intentionally creating fake and misleading information that are trying to mislead us all. And it's only gotten worse in the era of social media and AI. And I think we've all seen this ourselves. Just in the news and information you consume, you've undoubtedly seen so much more fake news out there that's been spreading in recent years. And AI just made it worse. You know, it used to be if somebody who wasn't a native English speaker was trying to create some misinformation, sometimes you could pick up on it. You could see that the language was a little off or the wording was odd or awkward. AI has erased that. So between algorithms that are geared to feed us more and more of the same thing, and AI that can create, you know, a seemingly real news article in seconds, there's just a ton of misinformation. And everybody's worried about it. It's not just us, it's everybody. We did a survey that I'll talk a little bit about in a second, just before the election in the fall, and 85% of Americans told us they were worried about misleading election information. So we're all worried about it. And what all of this has done together has created information anxiety. We're just worried all the time. We see a real news story about something we don't like, it gives us anxiety. And then all of this artificial information is pumped at us, designed intentionally to get us more worried. And it has us doubting what's real, what's not real, and that's by design, and that's a huge problem.
Great, thank you, Jason. Should I advance to the next slide?
Yes, please. I'm sorry. I should have. My pregnant pause was meant to move forward, but I should have been
Perfect.
more.
Yes. Tell us what people can do to ensure that what they see online is accurate.
So this is a little bit like maybe obvious, and especially I think the folks on the call, it's really obvious. It's a little bit like going to the dentist. We all know we should go to the dentist twice a year. Doesn't mean we always do it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks out there who don't know you should go to the dentist twice a year. And I think some of the folks that you all serve, some of this may be new to them. But it's really important that you use trusted news sources. So something that sounds vaguely familiar, the Chicago Daily News, well, that's not a real news outlet. So things that sound semi-real, you should double check on them. And it is important as well to get outside of your own filter bubble. So if you're in MSNBC all day long, it's a credible news source, but they do have a bias. And so getting out of your filter bubble, even when you're using credible sources, is really important. And be aware that political news in particular is where people have a real motivation to create fake news. Yes, people are out there creating fake animal videos, but there's less of a profit motive for that, and there's less of a reason to do that. Have your antenna up, particularly when you're reading news about politics. And then if I had to leave you with one, I think this is actually the most important one. Be alert for rage bait. This is content designed specifically to get our heart pounding, our emotions raging, and for us to just share without thinking, or to get mad. It's really effective. It impacts all of us. I am not immune from that at all. I'll see something online, I'll get really worked up. That's intentional. It's meant to turn off the fact-checking part of your brain and engage in that emotional part. So sometimes legitimate news outlets do that. They have fallen victim to this too, but far more often, if you're reading something or seeing something that is really getting you upset, good or bad, if it's making you really, really energized as well, take a breath and fact check it. That is something really important. So be alert for rage bait. And the good news is there are lots of places out there that will give you quality information, that will fact check it, that designed specifically to say, hey, I read this article about this. Is this real? The Associated Press, Reuters, there's many of them out there, like Snopes too. So double check at a place that you know is authentic. Don't just Google it, because you might be seeing bots repeating the same junk. Go to a known credible source. And also go to the News Literacy Project. They have such great tools to help folks and help your constituents learn how to spot real from not real news. And then we're ready for my last slide, Nelson. There we go. So I can just jump into this. This is these are our research findings. We did this survey that I mentioned at the end of last year, just before the election. And what was really interesting about this is we found that concern about election misinformation is bipartisan, which really did surprise me. Look at that, 62% of Democrats, 60% of Republicans, that's well within the margin of error, are very worried about intentional election misinformation. Not surprising that independents are a little bit lower. Independents tend to be slightly less engaged in general, less engaged voters, so less engaged news consumers as well to a certain extent. But it's a big bipartisan problem. I actually take that as good news in a sense, because it means that there's a possibility to have a solution. It's not just one party or the other. This is a bipartisan issue. A little less positive, however, if you look down on the bottom left there, is the generation gap. Boomers, who've had decades of news consumption and are much more sophisticated about news in general, they're more worried about it than Gen Z. Gen Z native on digital natives, they are more likely to think that what they see online in social media from people they follow can be trusted. And so they're a lot less worried about misinformation than their older peers. That is a concern, because obviously the Gen Z, a huge generation, going to get bigger and bigger. They've got some educating that they need to do in order to be more savvy news consumers. Whose fault is it? Well, we're mad at everybody, apparently. We think our politicians are to blame. We blame the social media platforms. We blame news outlets themselves. And increasingly, we're recognizing that AI plays a potentially problematic role in creating misinformation. All right, with that, that's a lot. I'll leave you on one sign of hope, and that I think that we can get some skills building in a second with Allee's presentation. But over an hour a day is what Americans spend consuming traditional media, reading news from traditional media sites. Doesn't mean they're, have a physical newspaper, but they're going to a legitimate news sources, website, app, podcast, as well as more traditional sources. And almost an hour a day on social media. They're getting news on social media as well. That means Americans are hungry for news. They spend more than 2 hours a day consuming news. That's really good. It means we want information. We just need to make sure they're getting legitimate information from honest sources. And so that's where you all come in. So with that, I'll say thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being on today. This is such an important subject. Smart News is really dedicated to making sure that all Americans have access to high quality news and that they have the skills to make sure that they're consuming real news, not fake news. Many, many thanks to Consumer Action, to all of you, and to the News Literacy Project, who does great work. Nelson, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jason, for those remarks and for helping set the stage for our next speaker. We're going to go ahead and switch over control of the slide deck to Allee quick, and then I'll tell you a little bit about her. But yeah, thank you. Now we are ready to learn. And great. Hi, Allee. I'll let people know a little bit about you. Allee Quick is the Director of Community Engagement for the News Literacy Project, where she supports teachers, families, and communities that are teaching news literacy to kids and teens outside of traditional classrooms. Allee also advises the independent student newspaper at Southern Illinois University and previously served as editor of her community newspaper in Carbondale, Illinois. Allee, thank you so much for being here and for putting together such an amazing slide presentations that we're all about to see. What a treat. We've been really looking forward to the presentation today. Thank you, and please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Just holler if you cannot hear me or see my slides. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Jason, for that excellent introduction. As Nelson said, we're going to talk more now about some of those news literacy skills. So what can we actually do? And more importantly, for our organization, as you'll learn, how can we help the young people in our lives prepare themselves to encounter this really overwhelming information landscape that Jason kind of told us about. There's a QR code on this slide. I'll show it a couple more times. If you want to follow this QR code, I'll also give a URL. If you don't want to click the QR code, that is fine. That will take you to a form that you can fill out. And once you fill out that form, you will be able to download some resources that I'll talk about today. The link that you'll get in your email and on the landing page after you fill out the form will take you to a Google Doc that just has links to some resources that we'll go over today. So hopefully you can actually go and use this stuff in your community. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Allee Quick. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the News Literacy Project. We won't repeat everything you've heard, but this is me. Thanks for having me. So my organization, the News Literacy Project, our mission is to advance the teaching of news literacy in K-12 education. So our focus is really on that education space. Our vision is that all students in the US would be skilled in news literacy before they graduate from high school. So some states now, you may, depending on where you live, even have a requirement in your public schools to teach media literacy. So this is kind of the type of stuff that we're looking to do. We want to bring more news and media literacy to middle schools, high schools, make sure that everybody has that ability to participate in civic society as a well-informed and critical thinker. A little bit about some of our recognitions. A couple of years ago, we were honored with the Library of Congress, by the Library of Congress with their literary award, the David M. Rubenstein Prize. Very proud of that. And last year we got a Webby, which is something that recognizes digital products online. So what is news literacy? This is obviously the topic of the day, so let's set a little standard here. News literacy is the ability to determine the credibility of news and other information. And the really important thing here is that it's an approach that teaches you how to think about news and information you encounter and not what to think about them. Jason kind of set the stage with us, telling us, we should make sure that we're checking credible sources. So our concern is, how do we know? How do we analyze sources to make sure that they are credible? So today we're going to discuss how to distinguish news from other types of information. We'll talk about ethical standards of journalism. We'll also talk about some fact-checking basics and some verification skills. And like I said, I will give you some resources and tips that you can use to bring more news literacy education into your community. That's the hope. So at News Literacy Project, we have 5 standards for news literacy, and these kind of guide everything that we make. All of our curriculum, all of our resources come back to these 5 standards. So I want to introduce those to you. Number 1 is information type. That's where we talk about distinguishing what is news from something else, like an advertisement or opinion or even propaganda. We also talk about the importance of a free press, acknowledge the importance of the First Amendment in American democracy. We talk about credibility, where we're understanding professional and ethical standards of journalism and being able to apply those standards to help us discern what is credible and what is not. We talk about verification, analysis, and evaluation. This is where we're actually flexing those muscles, increasing the critical habits of mind, verifying things for ourselves, doing some of our own fact checking. We're going to do that today. And finally, our 5th standard is citizenship. When we have all of these prior 4, we think this helps us to exercise our civic responsibility by seeking, sharing, and producing credible information. So once we have this, it's our responsibility to make sure we're doing this and sharing information with our communities that is credible. And so today we're going to focus on information type, credibility, and that verification piece. Jason shared with us some numbers, just a couple of more. Since my organization focuses on that K-12 education, we asked about 1,100 teens to answer some questions about their media habits and their feelings on, conspiracy theories and misinformation. So we found that a majority of teens were inclined to believe at least one conspiracy theory that they may encounter on social media. I'm hoping that my slides are loading. I'm seeing something that's indicating they might not be changing. So let me know if I need to do anything differently, please.
We're seeing a slide that says young people want media literacy education.
Great. Okay, super, thank you. So what we found also is that teens indicated in this survey that they wanted media literacy instruction. So we see, over 50% in these different age ranges, age 13 to 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, saying that they think that schools should be required to teach media literacy. But only about 39% say that they're actually getting this education in schools. So a majority want it, but a majority say they're not sure if they're getting it or they're definitely not getting it. So this is where we see a place for these types of organizations like yours. Obviously, my organization creates resources primarily intended for teachers, but we also serve these community spaces to make sure that, even if teens are not getting media literacy education in their school, they're getting it somewhere. Once again, this is the resource document on this slide that I think is loading right now. This QR code will take you to that form that I mentioned earlier. If you fill that out, you'll be able to get the resource document, which has a lot of links to some things you can download and actually use yourself. So we're going to start with that distinguishing news from other types of information, that first standard that I covered earlier. I'm going to try to play this video, and it doesn't have any sound or anything, so if you don't hear sound, that's fine. But basically what this video is going to show you are different types of content that you might see in a social media feed. You should see a little gray bubble that pops up that says content. So it's just kind of highlighting, as you're scrolling social media, there are different types of content that you might encounter. And what we are looking at is how to tell what type of information you're actually seeing. So we've got 6 types of information up here on this slide. I'll go into these in a little more detail, but on the next, we'll see how these different types of information are all filtered together, and they kind of look the same, right? The ad might look similar to the entertainment, might look similar to the news piece, then an opinion piece that looks the same. So we're looking at, how do we sort through these things? How do we understand the purpose of information, and therefore, what it's trying to do for us and how we can think about that? We're going to go back to that News Literacy in America survey that I mentioned. Less than 20% of teens could distinguish between these types of information. And I think a lot of us probably feel the same way. So here are 2 different types of content. Unlike news, ads intend to promote and sell products, services, or ideas. So on one side, we've got a news story that's about Birkenstock. And on the other side, we have an advertisement that's just saying, hey, buy some Birkenstocks. Traditional ads like the one that you see on the right are pretty easy to spot. So easy that we often kind of overlook them, scroll right past, bring me to the content I'm here to see, hopefully that news. So this is an example of a news story and a traditional ad. But there are some ads that look a little less traditional. So we have that same news story on the left from the Austin American-Statesman about Birkenstock. And then on the right, we have something from the New York Times, a paid promotion that is also an ad, but looks a lot less like an ad. So these non-traditional ads are seeking to get our attention. They're blending in with the rest of the content, and they kind of look like news a little bit. But the primary purpose of these paid posts are still to sell a product. So once again, we've got that news story on the left, and we have an advertisement on the right. So we break information down into 6 zones, and this is all about this information's primary purpose. So news is information that's meant to inform you through fair and accurate reporting about local, national, and international events, as well as issues and people of significance or interest. A little bit later, I'll talk just a tiny bit about news judgment or newsworthiness. We have a whole lesson that the News Literacy Project produced about just that. There's also opinion. Opinion may give you a particular perspective and is intended to persuade you, but ideally it uses fact-based evidence. There's a lot of conversation that can be had about news versus opinion. Opinion that runs in a credible news outlet should be based on reporting and facts. So this is where we talk about it's a difference of opinion, but not a difference of the facts. And then advertising, which we covered, of course, is information that is designed to sell a product or a service. We also have entertainment. This is information that's created to amuse or please or relax or distract you. So we're talking about memes that might be dressed up to look like news. We're talking about things like The Daily Show, where it might look like a newscast. You may have somebody behind a desk with papers, and you may have a lower third and some things that are traditional that you may see in a newscast, but it's actually entertainment that's meant to make you laugh or have some kind of feeling. Raw information is another type of information that we see. This is unprocessed information, meaning that nobody has really analyzed it or checked it or edited it. There's no context there. So this would be something like a database or surveillance footage. There may be a lot more to understand about what you're seeing, but all you're seeing is that raw information. And then finally, propaganda is another information type. This is information that provokes you, often uses false or distorted information to manipulate your emotions. Jason talked about that emotional manipulation. So this is where we see propaganda fitting in. This is something that makes you really angry or really sad, or as Jason also mentioned earlier, it might make you happy or make you laugh. So these are the kind of things to watch out for. If your emotions are activated, it's a really good indication to take a second to slow down. So I know I won't be able to hear you, but I have a couple of exercises for you to kind of think about some of this zoning of information. So what you see here is a screenshot from the people.com website, People Magazine's website. And the question here, which we would present to students, is how many ads do you see? So I'll give you all a couple of seconds to take a look at this. Once again, this is just a screenshot from the People website. There could be 1, 2, or 3 ads according to our multiple choice here. And there are 2. So I'll give you the answer now. There's this kind of traditional ad that goes across the top, a banner ad. And then in the bottom left, you'll also see something that is made to look like the posts on people.com, but it's actually a sponsored post from BookBub. So this is something that's trying to sell something. And an indication that it is doing so is that you have that little tag that says sponsored. I've got another one for you all. This is an Instagram post from the Poynter Institute. And I'm kind of giving away the answer on this slide, I'm hoping you can see it. It says that it's 97% loaded. But this is an Instagram post from Pointer. And there are some clues here that indicate that this post is actually an opinion piece. So I'll give you a second to take a look. And again, hoping that my slide has fully, that you all can view it. So the main clue here is this tag at the top that says commentary. So one thing that's important to understand, and one thing that we try to teach when we talk about zoning information, is that sometimes things are going to be labeled as opinion and sometimes they're not. We may encounter words like commentary or analysis, but these are indications that someone has, a person has analyzed this for you, and commentary indicates that, you know, there's an additional comment. So this may, you know, have some credible information in it, some original reporting, but at the end of the day, it is commentary. And that is just another way of saying opinion. One more. This is a post from the Tampa Bay Times, which is a newspaper in Florida. And so what we're looking at here is, do we think this is opinion, news, or raw information? So I'll just give you a second to take a look at this, and then we'll talk a little bit. So what we're seeing here is a post that is news. This is a breaking news event. You can see here that the source is the Tampa Bay Times. This is a newspaper, like I said. We'll talk more in detail in a few minutes about how we can assess a news site or something that appears to be a news site. I think Jason mentioned some of these kind of pink slime news sites that are made to look like news. So we'll talk in more detail about how do we know Tampa Bay Times would be a credible source or not. But this is a news piece. So we have no tag that it's opinion. This is, you know, just straight news of a breaking news event that happened last month in the area. And then I want to direct you to some resources that cover some of these things. So a lot of the slides that I showed you came from a collection that we have called the Daily Do Now. This is something we provide to teachers as well as librarians and kind of community leaders. These slides are ready to use. You can download them and share them with whatever constituents you may have in an event that may be appropriate to do so. We find that, you know, people share these in libraries, and if you wanted to, you know, talk with young people about these issues, you can take a look at these together, kind of walk through these exercises. So those are available to download, and there's a link to them in that resource document that I mentioned earlier. And then on the right is a poster, something that, again, could be hung in a community space. So this kind of recaps those 6 zones of information that we covered earlier. So I want to move on and talk about some verification. For this next section, we're talking about some of your own kind of fact-checking skills. How can we do our own fact-checking? So I want to start with a quiz. You can scan this QR code on this slide and actually do the quiz yourself. I'm also going to show you all the images from the quiz, so we can just do it together. But if you want to do it on your phone, please feel free to follow that QR code. Basically, what we're going to be looking at is a series of images of birds. Some of them were taken by my colleague who lives in Washington. She is a nature photographer and a birder, so she takes photos of birds for fun. And some of the images that I'm going to display were generated by an AI image generator called Midjourney. So when we talk about this, what we're looking for is, how can we tell whether the images you're seeing were a photograph taken by a human being? And how can you tell which images are AI generated? So if you're not familiar with AI image generators, what you can do is you can give it a command, you know, show me an image of an owl, and it would do that. Your product would not be a photo, it would be an image made by a computer. But these are becoming more common online. So this is what we're going to talk about here. Okay, so I'm going to show you the images, excuse me. I'm going to show you the images on the screen as well, but if you have followed that QR code, you can do the quiz yourself and see how you do. So this is an image, once it's downloaded for you. And so the question here is, was this a photo taken by a person, or was this an image generated by an AI image generator? Just gonna give you a second to look at it. If you're following along on your phone, move to the next one. So here's another image of a bird. Here's an owl. Was this a photo taken by a person or an image created by an AI image generator? I'll move on to the next one. Here's another image taken by a person or created by an image generator. Just a couple more. Photo by a person or image created by a robot. Moving on to the next. Is this a photo taken by a person or was it created by an image generator? I think that one may have advanced a little slower, so I'll give you a second. All right, this next one is going to be our last one. Is this a photo or an image created by an image generator?
And just to let you know, Allie, your slides are moving well.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a little like bar that says it's like progress, so I'm just making sure. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so how did we do? Those of you who filled out this quiz on your phone should see like a score. If you were just following along with me, I'm revealing here which ones were taken by photos taken by a person and which ones were created by those AI image generators. That first one with the flower was real photo. The owl was AI generated. The heron in the tree was AI generated. This tiny little hummingbird, it was a real photo. That second to last one is an AI image. And the final one of the most incredible photos I've ever seen, was real, taken by my colleague. So the question to reflect on is, was this harder or easier than you expected? And were there any visual clues that you were actually looking for that helped you separate real from fake? And I think that for me, when I did this quiz, because I did this quiz myself and I did not know the answers when kind of it first was created. And I, for the most part, felt like I was just guessing. I am not such a birder that I would go out with a camera and take photos, but I, enjoy watching the birds outside my window and, thinking like looking up, in my little guide, what kind of birds they are. And half the time I had no idea looking at this. The point here is that AI image generators are getting really good. It's getting really hard to tell. So here's another exercise for you to think about. Are there any visual cues or clues that give away that this image is AI generated? And I'm just telling you off the bat, it is AI generated. This is not a real photo. This is around the time that the Barbie movie came out, and it was really popular to see celebrities kind of through AI image generators, wearing these pink suits or pink outfits. So there are some visual cues, right? The plant looks kind of fake, right? It looks a little painted. Some of the lines are a little too smooth. Things just look a little unreal. But there's one really big clue here that tells us that this may not be legitimate, and it's that source. So if you'll see the account that actually posted this image, it's called Butt Crack Sports. And I hope you'll forgive this very silly name, but it illustrates it so well because it's just so goofy. And if we look a little further into this actual source, we'll see that the bio says nothing tweeted is factual, satire, news and trolling. So this is a really good indication just by looking at the source, we know in 2 seconds flat. So yes, we have some visual cues here that might tell us this is AI generated. Like I said, those kind of really smooth lines, things just look a little suspicious. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the best way to know for sure is to look at the source. So we can conclude through the bio that this is not factual, this is satire, this is a trolling site. I want to walk you through one more little exercise like this. So on the right here, you'll see a social media post that claims to show a photo of a fire at a Temu warehouse in China. But this is an AI generated image. And so we've already covered that these AI tools can create photorealistic images. And at first glance, this kind of looks real. But there are some clues here that indicate that this is not genuine. So I'll give you a second to just kind of take a look, take it all in, and think about what things that you're seeing may tell us that this is not a legitimate, real photograph. This is AI generated. How do we know? I'm sure you're noticing some things that are standing out to you, so let's talk about what they are. The first thing is that this says the total damages were only $56.19, but something seems a little off about that, right? If you're not familiar, Temu is an Amazon-like retailer based in China, and it's known for selling super cheap stuff. So this is a humorous post meant to poke fun, claiming that the entire inventory is worth only, 56 bucks. So that's a good indication, right? These are these emotions that we're talking about. Yes, joy, laughter, humor, that counts. So the use of humor doesn't automatically mean that a post is false or that an image is fake, but it means the creator may be prioritizing entertainment over news, kind of like back to that zoning of information that we talked about. So like I said, if a post makes you laugh, it's a good idea to slow down, make a check. Let's check some things out. So there are some other red flags here besides that. As we kind of establish looking at those bird images, it can be really, really hard to tell what is real and what isn't. But there are a couple of clues here that will help us figure it out. So in the top right, you should see it circled there in red. This is a symbol for X.com, formerly Twitter, for X's AI chatbot, which is called Grok. And that chatbot can also produce images. There's another watermark in the bottom right, which you should be able to see circled in red as well. So if you look a little bit closer and you kind of know what you're looking for, you can see, okay, this is AI generated. Of course, not every image is going to have that watermark, but if you can't find any clues about its authenticity, you can look elsewhere for some more information. So again, we're going to delve a little deeper into this. How do I know if a news source is credible? But if we see something like this and we want to check it out, we're not sure if it's real or not, we can search for news articles from reputable sources. This is not real. This is not legitimate. This is AI generated. And if we were to Google, Temu warehouse fire, we would not find any credible news outlets reporting this. So my colleague, he often says, if this is true, what else would have to be true? If it's true that an entire warehouse for a large retailer caught on fire, what else would have to be true? News outlets would be reporting this. So, we have to look at this like bigger picture. And I really like that kind of idea of, okay, if this is true, what else has to be true? All of the prior info came from a post on a news literacy project website called RumorGuard. You can find it at rumorguard.org. RumorGuard is it's a platform where we take published fact checks of viral rumors and take out the news literacy lessons from them. So it's really showing you, okay, if this is a false viral rumor, how did we know? How did we come to that conclusion? So basically what we've just walked through with that Temu warehouse fire, that's what RumorGuard is full of. A lot of these like viral online rumors that spread, but hey, here are the clues you can look for to know for yourself that this is not legitimate. So check out RumorGuard. Again, making a plug for some resources that we have, aside from just going to rumorguard.org. We also have a newsletter called The Sift, which is made for educators. And in that weekly newsletter, you get things like the slides I just showed you. Those are actually available for you to download and use. We also have a lot of infographics and some quizzes. One of my favorite newer infographics is this detecting tricks of context. We find that a lot of misinformation is simply something that's been taken out of context and kind of spread in a misleading way. So I really like this one that breaks down some of that stuff. And then we also have this other quiz that you can find in the SIFT about fact-checking red flags. So lots of good stuff. And again, all these are linked in that resource document. We also have some kind of more broad infographics. This one is just a brief about misinformation, different types, and some things to know. And the thing about this that's cool is it's also in Spanish. In a couple of weeks, we'll be publishing a lot more Spanish stuff. I've been working with one of our partners at Fact Chequeado to translate some of our resources into Spanish. So we're just getting ready to publish those shortly. So if you work with Spanish populations, you'll be able to find that online as well. Okay, so I promised that we would talk about some ways to help us know what kind of sources are credible. So that's what we're going to do now. So we know we should check the source of information. We've kind of talked about that. We keep saying, check the source, check the source. So how do we know if a source is credible? What I'm showing you here is a code of ethics from the Society of Professional Journalists. So journalism is not one of those professions where you have to get a certificate or a license to practice, but it is, one of these professions where we're encouraged to take responsibility for the information that we provide. As journalists, we commit to that. And, as Nelson said in the beginning, just a reminder, I am also a faculty advisor for a student newspaper, and I was an editor of my community newspaper for several years. So I know from working in the field that, right now, for example, this is hanging on the wall of the student newsroom where I'm the advisor. So we keep these things in mind. So what are some highlights? We're looking to seek truth and report it. We want to minimize harm. Journalists should act independently. And we want to be accountable and transparent. And, in journalism, we consider it a discipline of verification. What you're seeing on the screen here is a draft of a news story that one of my colleagues wrote at the Minnesota Star Tribune. So what you're seeing here is kind of this fact-checking process that happens behind the scenes in newsrooms. When you see a final news story, you may not know all that's gone into it. Obviously, reporters go out and talk to people. We know that much. They do research and report back the facts that they learn. But there are also editors involved in this process. And what we're doing as editors is we're looking for, what things do we need to double check? So we're looking at just some basic facts here, like dates. We see a month away. We see July. We're looking at numbers. More than 200 countries involved. So, okay, we can check that. We're looking at the spelling of somebody's name. So we have quite maybe an unusual spelling here. So that's been highlighted. And then you can see those red check marks that's gone back and editors actually checked that themselves. As an editor, I can tell you I spent so much time checking people's names. We can also, on the outside, look for these standards of quality journalism that are running through stories. So when we read a news story, there are some certain things that we should be able to see and we can notice as news consumers, as the readers, the viewers. So we're looking for news stories that have multiple credible sources. So something I talk about with my students all the time is that, you can't just talk to one person. You need to talk to, 2, 3, 5 people to really get the full picture of a story. You can see some kind of verification. Oftentimes, you can probably verify some of these things yourselves. We're looking for an avoidance of bias. Bias is a very complex and nuanced topic that we can spend an entire hour and a half talking about. And it's obviously deeply personal. We all come to it with some idea of what is biased or isn't. But we're looking for, striving for that goal, right? We're looking for balance. We want to see multiple sides of an issue represented. We're looking for context. This is super important. So we talked at the beginning about that raw information. We're not just repeating raw information, right? Where journalists are giving you the context that kind of makes it make sense. But there is documentation involved, right? You can see in a news story, oftentimes you can see reporters saying through a records request, we got this, a letter sent to this person showed this, police body cam footage showed this. So that's the kind of documentation. And when you read stories or listen to news stories, you can kind of hear that evidence coming through. And then, you know, one thing that we talk about a lot is fairness. We want to treat subjects and sources with respect. You're looking for, did they give people a chance to kind of speak for themselves, right? This is especially something we talk about with crime reporting. Was someone who was accused, were they given the chance to say something? Was their lawyer contacted for comment? So things like this is kind of what we're looking for when we're actually, you know, chewing over a news story for ourselves. I want to walk you through one more quick exercise, and then we'll open it for questions. So this is a resource that we created in collaboration with Smart News called Is It Legit? 5 Steps for Vetting a News Source. So what are these 5 steps? Number 1, do a quick search. We talked about that a bit. We're going to go in a little more detail. We look for standards. So we just talked about some of those journalistic standards. We're looking in the coverage for those standards. We're also looking for, hey, do they abide by these ethical guidelines? Do they have a code of ethics that's published on their website that I can read? We're looking for transparency. Do I know who to contact? Do I know who funds this or who owns it? We should be able to examine how errors are handled. So if they make a mistake, if they misspell someone's name, if they get a number wrong, how do they handle that? And then finally, this one is the one that's kind of the most difficult to sum up because it comes down to assessing news coverage. So you've got to actually look at the coverage, you know, and kind of decide how you assess how they cover things. What do they cover? Are they covering things fairly, accurately? Okay, so we're going to walk through these steps, and we're going to use USA Today as an example. This isn't to say that USA Today is better or worse than anything else. It's just, it's an example. It's what we're going to use today. So step 1 is to do a quick search. So really quick, I want to introduce you all to a concept called lateral reading. Vertical reading is where we like read through a website top to bottom. We scroll down, we read the website. Lateral reading is the idea that you can open these other tabs in a browser and read laterally across multiple sources. So it's a good way to check, you know, and we've talked about this already. So for example, you know, that Temu warehouse fire. I suggested that, you know, you look for credible news reports. So what is that? You'd open another tab, right? And Google like Temu warehouse fire. What do you see? That's lateral reading. And I'm gonna show you a little bit of that. So again, like I said, previously we may evaluate a website by reading it top to bottom, but we are going to read laterally to give us some more context. Okay, so when I wanted to use USA Today as an example, I just went ahead and Googled what is USA Today? And this is what popped up on my results. So obviously I got usatoday.com, but if I'm lateral reading, I don't think I want to look at that because, you know, I will show you some stuff from the USA Today website that is useful. But in this first step of doing a quick search, I'm looking for sources other than USA Today themselves. We've got this AI overview at the top. And so what I did was I expanded that AI overview. If you do that in Google, you'll get some links and you'll get some other kind of sources. This is where the bot pulled this information to summarize. So I expanded that view so I could see what the sources were that all this information is coming from. And I see Britannica. I recognize this, you know, as the maker of the famous encyclopedias. So I'm going to click on that. So I clicked on this entry in Britannica, and here's what I found. And this is just a little, you know, blurb. It's a national U.S. daily general interest newspaper. Says the year it was launched and who started it. Head of Gannett newspaper chain. Okay. Talks a little bit about its circulation. Initially considered gimmicky, gradually developed a reputation for higher quality while increasing its circulation. So this is giving me a pretty good picture of what this organization is and kind of their background, their history. So that's what I found through my search. So step 2, I'm going to look for standards. And this is where we're going to go back to the USA Today website. So when I scroll to the very bottom of usatoday.com, this is what I see. This is the information that's in the footer. This is a great place to look for some context on any website. I pretty much always go to about or scroll to the bottom, look in the footer to get some info anytime I visit a new website. One link that I found down there is ethical principles. So when I click on that, what do I find? Here it is. You can see my scroll bar on the right, so you can see like how far down this page goes. But this is USA Today's Principles of Ethical Conduct for Newsrooms. So I see here what USA Today, what they're expected to do. The journalists who work there, how are they expected to conduct themselves? You know, what are their priorities? What are their kind of ethical principles as they profess them? For step 3, I'm going to check for transparency. So back to that footer, we already found this information elsewhere too, but we see it's a division of Gannett. And that Britannica article had also mentioned the Gannett newspaper chain. So again, I'm going to do some lateral reading. And so I Google, what is Gannett? Tell me more about this, company. We get Britannica again, we get some other things. I kind of thought it was interesting that we have people also search for it. You can see that these are other similar national news chains that own, some local outlets. So that's one way to learn a little bit more about that. Another thing with transparency is that newsroom staff, who works there? Who are these people? So if I click on that link, newsroom staff, this is what I get, a newsroom directory. So we have these kind of top level editors, there are their pictures. And of course, I can Google any of these people as well and learn all about them. We've got their accounts on X that are linked here, as well as an email address for them. And also, just to show you a little bit more of how they handle their newsroom staff, this is a screenshot of an actual story page. I know there's a lot of ads on here. I thought that was kind of interesting to see, considering what we talked about at the very beginning. But here is a story. This is a story page. And I see the author of the page is here. And his name is Bart Jansen. And if I hover over that with my mouse, I can actually click on that. So what happens when I do? Here is a little bio of this guy. We have his title. He's the White House correspondent. A little blurb about him. Again, I can Google this guy and check this stuff out elsewhere and kind of verify this for myself. The other thing I want to point out on this page is that we have a little icon that will take us to an email for him, as well as a link to that Principles of Ethical Conduct for Newsrooms document that we saw before. Step number 4, examine how errors are handled. Back to the footer of usatoday.com, we have a link that says request a correction. So what does that look like? When I go to that page, this is what I find, kind of their policy on corrections and clarifications. I have a place where I can email and actually report an error if I see one. And then if you scroll down a bit, you can actually see they list the corrections they've made. You can see the original story, you can see exactly what they got wrong and kind of how they fixed it. And then for step 5, we're going to assess news coverage. And this is just a matter of really diving into what they're covering. This is a screenshot of the homepage of usatoday.com. usatoday.com. I took this last week when I was putting this together. It looks like May 2nd was the day I took this. You can kind of see, all right, these are the things that they're choosing to put on their front page. And I can obviously click and read on all these stories. But this is how we assess coverage. We actually look at, what are they covering? How are they covering it? What do the stories actually say? More resources on characteristics of credibility. This is it legit 5 steps that we just went through. This is a poster. You can download this, print it, hang it up somewhere. 7 standards of quality journalism, same thing. You can find this on our website. And then finally, I mentioned earlier a little bit about newsworthiness. We have this whole lesson on newsworthiness, but there's also a poster that goes along with it with these kind of 4 key factors for how journalists determine something is newsworthy. In other words, what's worthy of coverage, or, we also think about newsworthiness and news judgment when we think about what should we lead the broadcast with, or what should we put on the front page versus inside. And once again, just showing you this resource document. Everything I mentioned today, you can click and explore, download these resources. If you follow that QR code and fill out the form, you will be directed to a link where you can see that document. And I guess it's time to open for questions. That's all I've got for you all. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing, I think.
Uh,
If I can figure out how.
Yeah, it's you've already stopped. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Allie. That was great. I'm now going to show my slide deck. We are moving into questions. And to help us with questions, we have Linda Williams standing by. She's been gathering questions you've been sending in. And if you have any now, please type them in for Allie or for Jason. Linda, are you there? Let us know if you have
I
questions.
am Nelson. Nelson, I'm here. Thank you so much. And Allie, that presentation was awesome. Thank you. The first question is, and I think you've answered it, but what specifically is meant by smart news? And how does it differ from traditional news, let's say the news that we get on Fox or MSNBC?
Yeah, so it sounds like the question is, what is smart news? So I'll let Jason take that.
I can actually, that's one I actually know. So smart news is a new, thank you for asking. That almost sounds like the kind of thing my mom would have asked. Smart news is a news aggregator. So what we do is we pull in news sources from all over. We have Fox News and MSNBC and the big networks and newspapers and news wires. And so we have quite literally hundreds of legitimate publishers from across the political spectrum. From across the country as well. So think if you've used Apple News before, or even Google News, it's very similar. The main difference between Smart News and Apple News is we're free. We're advertiser supported. You don't have to subscribe to get it. And that's nice because a lot of people don't want or can't afford to pay $15 a month for a news subscription. So that's it. We bring in news from all sorts of places, from publishers you've heard of from all around the country.
Great, Jason. Thank you. My next question is, given how the media is being attacked, the word on the street is that U.S. media is becoming much more cautious about how to report on stories so that they don't become a target. So what are the best ways for news consumers to get the facts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this comes back to kind of as a news consumer to assessing coverage that you might see. So I think the big thing is, has the news coverage changed since certain things may have happened, or as culture changes, does news coverage change and how? So I think it takes some just kind of building up that history of following a news source for a long time and noticing how things may change or may not change. I would also say that credible news outlets are going to, again, be transparent about changes that they may make. I'll use an example from my own recent work with some students. I advise a student newspaper at a university, and we had some international students who had their visas revoked, and this was in response to some changes in the presidential administration and some things like that. And around that time, the same thing was happening around the country at campuses all over the country. And some professional organizations like Student Press Law Center and some other kind of professional organizations that are specifically talk with student media, they released these public statements about how to handle sensitive issues like immigration, for example. What we found was that more students were wanting to talk anonymously. This is something that we really wouldn't have done in the past. As a student newspaper, we would avoid using anonymous sources as much as possible. But thanks to the public guidance from these kind of professional journalist organizations, basically saying, think about how you want to handle this. It helped my students think about it. And the point that I'm making is that it was all in public. This is something that these journalistic organizations made public statements. They released the statements. You can go and read them online right now, what they said. And that, in turn reflected how we wanted to cover and handle sourcing. And we said that in our stories, we're handling this differently, and here's why. So I think that is an important thing to think about. If you notice changes like that, you may also notice that the news organizations are saying why things have changed and how things have changed. It's all about that transparency. That's something to really look out for.
Great, thank you. Do you foresee any improvements in curbing misinformation or disinformation, or should we assume that it's going to be entirely left up to the individual to determine what is true and what is not true?
I think both, both. Yes, my answer is yes. I think that the work that my organization is doing with schools is definitely meant to kind of improve this education, to strengthen these tools, to give these tools to young people. At the same time, it is going to be up to the individual to apply those tools, right? What we learn in school, what do we do with that? So I think both can be true and both are true, that we're doing important work in kind of growing this education and giving these opportunities and these resources to schools. And then once we have the information, it comes back to that like responsibility to share and seek and create credible information once we have the tools to do so.
Great. Thank you for that. The next question is coming from a self-identified boomer, in a good sense. And what this boomer is saying is what raises red flags is when he or she is reading news from a source where it is consistently negative coverage about one person or a certain issue. And this is becoming the norm. Most of the news outlet no longer practice investigative journalism, but they are becoming a propaganda machine. So do you have any thoughts about that at all?
My first thought is that there's a lot of really good investigative journalism still out there. I think that the media landscape is changing a little bit. It seems to me that a lot of really good investigations are done, by nonprofit newsrooms. ProPublica is one that I think of that really is, committed to this like investigative spirit. And so I think that if you're looking for investigative journalism, you may be looking in some new media outlets. Again, these nonprofit newsrooms are gaining ground, are gaining popularity, and have kind of devoted themselves to that mission in a lot of cases. At the same time, that's not to say that legacy media outlets like AP and these other kind of outlets are not doing that work. I think that they still are. And the other thing I would say about just feeling that something is overwhelmingly negative about one person or one issue, I think that kind of goes back to what Jason was talking about breaking out of your filter bubble a little bit. If you notice that you're seeing kind of the same thing over and over, it may be an indication that it's time to look at a different source. Again, I think that, it's a complicated media landscape and it's changing, but there are a lot of really good, credible sources out there. And I think the importance, it just speaks to the importance of seeking multiple sources too. If we're reading one specific outlet every single day and only one specific outlet every single day, you're getting this kind of filter through whatever their goals may be, whatever their kind of tendencies may be, right? So there are so many outlets out there that you can kind of spread the love and hopefully get some different perspectives.
Great. We thank you for that. We have quite a few on AI. The first question is, how are you, Smart News, screening AI services so that you can make balanced decisions on the news you deliver?
Wow, another question for me I would not have guessed. I think the question is, how are we at Smart News making sure that any AI created content from the publisher is being disclosed as such? I'll answer that question because just to clarify, we at Smart News are not publishers ourselves. We have a team of former editors and reporters who help us curate the news, but we're not actually writing the news. We're taking it from publishers from around the country. So we're not the ones actually making the news. So the AI we use is to help surface the articles that other publishers actually create, right? But we do require that our publishers ensure that any AI created stories that they have be marked as such. So if the Chicago Sun-Times, which is a legitimate news source, has an article that is aided, created, somehow enhanced with AI, that they disclose that as part of the article itself, so a reader knows. Now, almost, and Allie mentioned this, almost every publisher who's legitimate has a really good policy on this already, so we're not really asking publishers to do something that most of the good ones aren't already doing, but that's important to us. If you're reading an article that's been written, enhanced anyway with AI, we want you as a reader to know that.
Great, Jason, thank you. The next question is, how many states, if any, are developing guidance, AI guidance for how schools can use the AI tools?
As far as AI tools go in schools, I am not sure that that is being legislated at the state level. That's not something I'm familiar with. But I think at the school level, classroom level, I know teachers and administrators are thinking hard about the pros and cons of AI in a classroom setting. Some of you who may have students in school right now may know that there are policies against, using chatbots to actually write your papers for you and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a tool as well. So I think, my expectation is that teachers and school administrators are just kind of walking that balance of, how can we make sure that students are prepared for a world with these tools? And, how can we make sure that there's still kind of an academic integrity? So I know that's what I'm, thinking about when I talk about this stuff with students in my own life. So.
Great, Ali, thanks. One attendee is asking, should I be concerned that I got every single AI image quiz item wrong? Are there any additional quizzes that I can learn from?
No, I would not be concerned about that. If you're talking about the bird quiz, the point of the bird quiz is really that it's really hard to know just by looking. Nobody knows just by looking. In some cases you can, right? Like there are these little visual cues where it's like, we used to say, when these image generators were new, if they generated an image of a person, often the hands would look strange. You may have an extra finger or something like that. So sometimes there are visual cues that can be a red flag. Okay, that looks like not a person, right? Or something's going on here. But the thing is, these AI image generators are getting better all the time. So it's getting really hard to just look at it and know. And I don't want this to come across as cynicism. Like, don't feel cynical about that. The point is, there are other ways to check. If if it's something that activates that spidey sense, something seems off here, whether that's how it looks or the source. We looked at, that LeBron James example that came from that, kind of silly sports trolling website. These are other things that we can look at, right? If it's, again, like the Temu warehouse fire, if that's true, what else has to be true? It's a matter of taking it a step further and just understanding that sometimes there are going to be images that you may come across that may be AI image generated, but there are tools that you have to protect yourself. You can check the source, you can verify the information that you're seeing, and basically anything that makes you go, whoa, or makes you have a really strong emotion. These are 2 times where you just know you should take a step, take a breath. I'm having a strong emotion or something feels off here, then you can take a second and check somewhere else, check the source, see if any, news outlets are reporting something that you may see. So absolutely don't feel discouraged by that at all. Just know that it's getting harder, and know that means it's even more important to check your emotions and do those extra fact checks for yourself.
Great, and I think that just answered my next question. What if the information I'm seeing seems to be coming from a legitimate source? How can I judge its trustworthiness? So you answered
again,
that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just walking through those steps, right? It's looking at their transparency, looking at do they have standards that they, outline and seem to follow? What do other outlets have to say about it, right? Like if, for example, the Associated Press, like you can find a lot of reporting about the Associated Press in other news outlets. They've been in the news lately, right? So we can kind of get a really good sense of what this organization is by just doing some external reading.
Great, thanks. I have a two-part question. What states are integrating smart news and media literacy in their school system? And for every grandmother and nana out there, what are you teaching the kindergartners and first graders about media literacy?
So as far as media literacy education in states, it's changing all the time. I will see if I can find a good source to share on that. I know, in your state, if you're curious about this, check your local news, check your state legislature's website. I live in Illinois, and in Illinois, we do have a media literacy requirement in schools. This passed and was signed by our governor several years ago. So, I can go on the Illinois General Assembly website right now and just like have a look and see what the law actually says. So if you're curious about media literacy in your state and whether your state has adopted it, I would encourage you to look once again in your local news or in your state legislature just to see if they have something. So that's that. And I believe there was also a question for smart news in there too about whether smart news is used in schools. So I'll let Jason answer that.
Thanks for the question. I don't think we are, mainly because we're accessed through an app. So you got to have a smartphone or a tablet and download the app. And so I think it's just probably not used in schools. We don't push it at schools. I mean, maybe, but that's not something that we're focused more on adults and having access to it. But if an adult wants to responsibly use it with a kid, we're all for it.
Great, thank you, Jason. Which government agencies oversee fake news, if any?
So the thing about our system here is that there really isn't government censorship of any information. So this is why it's really important for us to all kind of have these tools. It's freedom of the press and freedom of speech in the US. So I think that's, why, it's pretty easy for sometimes, viral rumors to spread. There are certain laws that govern whether publishers are responsible for falsehoods that they may publish. I'm thinking about, libel laws, for example. Traditional publishers are, able to be sued over things like that, whereas social media, they're not considered publishers in the same way. So that's why we see, it could be a reason that we see viral rumors kind of spreading on social media, because those companies, we all are now like publishers, but we're all now also, as we've talked about, kind of in control of how we vet information too. So I think that makes it really important, even more important to have these skills, because it's up to us.
Great. Two more questions. Would using Google reverse image help find AI images?
Yeah, so reverse image search is great for a lot of different things. There are a couple out there. You mentioned Google. We also use TinEye is another one, TINEYE. That is another just kind of reverse image search. What those are really good at doing is helping you find where an image may have also like been posted or where it came from. It can also help you identify whether something has been edited. It's really, really common. One thing we see a lot are these like T-shirts that celebrities are wearing that may say weird things or kind of, very partisan things, could be a red flag. And if you kind of reverse image search something like that, you may find a million different versions of, a celebrity wearing T-shirts that say the same, like different weird things, but you can tell it's the same photo that's been edited over and over. So sometimes you may find, oh, this is an AI image. One way that you could find that, for example, if I see an image that I suspect is AI generated, if I put it into a reverse image search, it may take me to an original source. So, okay, earlier with the Temu warehouse fire, I showed you the watermark that said it was from an AI image generator, right? Well, sometimes images like that are shared without the watermarks. So if I see something like that and I put it into an AI image, a reverse image search, I may come up with the original that may have the watermark. Examples like that. I may find the original source is a social media account that specifically says in the bio that it's AI image. I find that a lot. You'll see images that circulate on social media without any AI tags. And if you put that image into a reverse image search, you find, for example, Cursed AI Facebook page. Oh, okay, it was posted there. This is a pretty good indication. This may be an AI generated image. There are also out there now more supposed detectors of AI images. They're not perfect. So, I mean, sometimes they're useful, but you know, they're not perfect. Once again, it's all about kind of checking the source where you found something like that. And again, using that kind of lateral reading scale. For example, if it's like big news, there's another example I have in a different presentation that's that shows Cinderella's castle at Disney World underwater. That's again one of those cases, just like the Temu warehouse fire. If this is true, what else would have to be true? That image would be all over credible news sites, right? So if we don't find it anywhere else, good indication that it could be fabricated in some way.
Great. Talking about AI generated images, where can a consumer report a fake image? What's the best place for that?
It kind of depends. It depends on where you find it and where it's been shared. So some social media sites are now using community notes where users can go on to a community note. It's not a comment, it's a little more than that, and say community note, hey, I suspect this is AI generated, or I know this is. And then when other people browse or see it, they may see that community note that you may have left, right? And they'll say, oh, okay, I see somebody has identified that this could be AI generated. So that very much depends on the platform. There are some places, you know, on some social media sites, you can actually report things as being, you know, not what they claim to be. I do this with, you know, you can do this with like Marketplace, right? Like, oh, this looks like a scam, whatever, I'm gonna report this as scam. This seems fake to me. I use your reverse image search and I see that this image is shared in a lot of other posts. This is not legitimate, right? So that's another option. The other thing too is really just using your own sphere of influence. So I live in kind of a small college town, and there are these like meme pages that are getting more popular around here. These are they're not news websites, but they're social media pages that purport to report news in our community. And sometimes they use AI generated stuff and it's completely fake. And so I have a time or two gone onto these pages and looked at what they posted, did some of my own fact checking, and then on my social media shared, hey, this page posted this. I did my research and here's the conclusion I've come to. This is false. So we all have a sphere of influence, right? We all have a community, family, friends, social media audience, whatever it may be. And this comes back to that idea that once we know how to seek credible information, then we can share credible information. And I think that includes, you know, if you see a friend sharing something that is false, having a conversation with that friend. Hey, did you know? Because sometimes we just all get fooled by this stuff. I've been fooled by stuff. We all do. So sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, using your own sphere of influence and just saying, hey, buddy, that thing you shared, here's a couple articles that actually like indicate that this may not be true, or here's what I actually found about that in a different news outlet, or whatever. Did you know that this source has been accused of X, Y, Z? So, you know, when you have the ability to do your own research and check these things, you can have these conversations with the people in your life.
Great. One last question. Drum roll, please. Can you talk about social interest sites like help sites, yoga, or parenting sites that's often reported as being a source for spreading misinformation? Why are these sources often targeted?
I think that there are a lot of sites out there that spread misinformation for one motivational reason or another. And I think for any of us, there are going to be special interests of things that we are interested in and therefore make us vulnerable. You know, there are different, as parents, right, we may be seeking information that are going to help our family, help our children, right? And so that might make us vulnerable to one thing or another. So I think that there are, it kind of goes back to how Jason sort of opened us at the beginning of, if your emotions are activated, this is a really good indication that you just need to take a breath, right? I think that health, wellness, children, families, these are all moments where we may feel especially vulnerable because we may feel especially emotional. So anytime we're feeling really emotional, again, it's just kind of honing that sense of, hey, this information is making me feel really scared, or this are making me really angry or very sad. So I'm just going to take 30 seconds to walk away from the computer, put the phone down, and just take a deep breath, and then check it somewhere else. So I think that's what it comes down to, is that when our emotions are involved, we're especially vulnerable.
Thank you. Let me toss it back to Nelson. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Allie. You guys rock. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Linda. And yes, thank you, speakers. Could I just squeeze in one last little question here? Maybe for reasons like looking outside your, what you normally look at, or for language reasons or other reasons, people maybe look to outside international news sources. Are there resources you can recommend for vetting those sources? Is it similar? I know, and perhaps Pointer is one of those organizations, but what if you are looking at international news sources?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same rules apply absolutely to international news, international sources. Transparency, doing that lateral reading, opening another tab, and just checking to see if you can verify it somewhere else. International sites, publishing norms may be different in other countries. I still think that some of the advice can still apply, where you should still be able to kind of vet the source in one way or another, see what their priorities are. If they don't have an ethical, if they don't have a standard of ethics published on their website, what else can we learn about them that might give me an indication of where their ethics and values lie, and do they align with mine?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jason and Allie, for this great presentation and for powering through so many questions today. I just want to remind everyone that we are a nonprofit, and if you are interested in supporting us with a contribution, here's the information on it. You'll have it next week. And also, if you want to support us by following us on social media, that is also very helpful, especially following us on YouTube. You will get a link to the YouTube recording of this webinar next week, so please remember to subscribe. Thank you again, Jason and Allie. Thank you, audience, for sticking with us through this in-depth presentation. We will see everyone next time. Thank you so much.